Welcome to our Sunday morning meditation service. The word for today from the Daily Word is, "My open heart discovers beauty all around me. Searching beyond my senses, I discover a greater depth of beauty. The mundane items and landmarks I may take for granted take on a deeper beauty when my memories fill them with meaning. My dear ones become even more beautiful to me when I pause to remember our fondest experiences and the love that binds us." It's really interesting that that's today. Yesterday I was thinking of all the wonderful things that Jack and I have done together, and what an incredible partner I have, and how it was so divinely happened. He walked past me at an audition for a show, and a voice said to me, "This is him." And it was like, wow. And then by the end of the audition time, he was talking to me, and it was like that was the whole start of this friendship. And it was divinely set in motion by the Creator. I was so blessed. We're going to do a call and response. I'm going to call, and hopefully you will respond. So, okay, thanks. Oh, my beloved, kindness of the heart, breath of life, I bow to you. Divine Master, divine friend, breath of life, I bow to you. And I'm coming home, and I'm coming home, and I'm coming home, and I'm coming home. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Coming home to the light within. Breath of life, I bow to you. light of creation, divine light, breath of life, I bow to you, and I'm coming home, and I'm coming home, and I'm coming home, and I'm coming home. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Coming home to the light within. Coming home to you. 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 Coming home to you.
Good morning, everyone. In our quest for the enlightened life, we have been taught that peace is the ideal against which we measure our understanding, our progress on our spiritual journey. And so what the inference is that we are learning how to be in this higher state of awareness more and more, and able to have peace in the different changing myriad tides of circumstances. So that's really what we are about doing in unity. I refer to this peace as mystical peace. It's not anything like the peace in our limited state of awareness, in which we have peace only when our personal expectations, plans, desires are being met. Mystical peace is not contingent upon that. It's only contingent upon one's level of consciousness. And so Eckhart Tolle, the master, speaks of this peace as also being defined as joy. It is so sublime that it could easily be defined as joy. And in unity, this is what we are about doing. Exploring the path to this higher level of awareness so that we can sustain this level of peace more and more. And that would be leading us to the enlightened life. The enlightened life would be one in which the joy piece of this awareness would be so valuable to us that we would no longer be brought down by any changing conditions or circumstances taking place in the world. To be enlightened, then, is to be in a state in which you're in the world, but you're not of the world, so that your peace is not contingent upon anything having to do with the circumstances and conditions of the world. As Eckhart Tolle puts it, yes, you still may like or enjoy a sunny day as opposed to a cloudy, rainy day or things like that, but it's not going to take you down from your higher level of awareness. So I'm going to begin with this particular PowerPoint because the person that wrote this tiny book, Lao Tzu, a Chinese sage, had the wisdom that was shared by Buddha and Christ, but actually shared it 600 years before their arrival on the scene. So this is verse 16 from the Tao Te Ching. Creatures come forth in great number, but each returns to a common source. Not to know the source is to stumble in confusion. To know the source is to be enlightened. When you know where you come from, you are naturally all-embracing and impartial. By immersing yourself in the safety of source, you can deal with what life brings you, and to the end of your days, you will suffer no confusion. Can we take this back again, please? Creatures come forth in great number, but each returns to a common source. Not to know the source is to stumble in confusion. To know the source is to be enlightened. When you know where you come from, you are naturally all-embracing and impartial. By immersing yourself in the safety of source, you can deal with what life brings you, and to the end of your days, you will suffer no confusion. This is a pretty clear truth as it is being relayed here, and it leads to a level of acceptance and flowing in life that bespeaks the reality of a greater intelligence. It bespeaks one who is in the world but no longer of the world, to be in this flow of consciousness. But the line from this particular passage that says, to know the source is to be enlightened, is misleading. For our modern fast-paced, high-tech culture would be in denial of this whole concept, because it seems to us that anything that could be achieved is achieved through the endeavors of the intellect. So they would almost everyone in the limited thinking of the world rejects the idea of faith, which is required to begin a certain mental transformation that is not intellectual. We may be inspired by some writings or teachings, but the whole calling has to do with the faith of stepping forward out of the initial state of awareness that the world shares. So that now we're not operating in the illusion of separation, of being a separate body-mind in a world of separate others. We're operating from another level of awareness, which requires faith to practice, and then discover, and then to know the truth of the omnipresence of God. So our culture, our world, for the most part, supposes that whatever needs to be achieved is achieved through intellectual prowess. And that's not true for the spiritual journey. There's a recent movie, I saw a piece of it on television. I don't have the title of it, but it was a seafaring saga. And they're aboard this ship with the sails somewhere in the 1800s. And the ship was carrying cargo to England. And they were doing so well in their journey that they expected to receive a big bonus when they arrived in port in England with their cargo. And the captain is at one point speaking to the doctor aboard this ship. And he asks him, "What are you going to do with your bonus?" And unlike the rest of the motley crew aboard the ship who are going to spend their bonus on ale and women and partying, the doctor says to the captain, "I'm going to spend it on research." And this line coming up was so out of place in this film because it was not a great film in any sense of the imagination. But the captain says, what will you be researching? And the doctor says, life. I will be researching life because I want to figure out why there is so much conflict, suffering, and immorality in the world, in life. And the captain then says, "It seems to me we were never to understand it, but only to experience it and accept it. Seems to me we were never to understand it, but only to experience it and accept it," which is something Eckhart Tolle could have said about this level of peace and the ability to only experience it, but to completely accept it. Our problem hinges on the long time we have spent in the limited state of awareness, that state of awareness in which we were born and naturally raised, developing a personal self through having a personal ego and to having collected all these different beliefs and concepts along the way in the erroneous idea that these concepts and beliefs through which everything I experience is filtered is objective, in a sense that each person believes he or she is an objective observer of life, which is not true. I mean, psychologists know this. This is practically taught, I believe, in psychological classes in colleges and universities. We see through our own perception what is filtered through our definition of self, which is the collection of concepts and beliefs we have come to embrace completely. But it is in no way truthful, because the whole concept of separation is an illusion. Our science, our empirical science based on that, is founded upon illusion. It can solve some things, it can take us to some places, but the fact of the matter remains, we cannot find true life or harmony, peace, and healing in this particular mindset. We have to transcend it. We have to, by faith, start to live from a completely expanded paradigm that all life is interconnected, and everything that is thought and every act is registered in what is known as a reciprocal world. It comes back to the person who is embracing that thought and carrying out that action. It returns to that person. And in doing so, in our limited awareness, we do not understand, but that is what is known as karma, or reaping what you sow. And the true object of our existence, the objective of every human seeker, is to transcend karma, which is to transcend the illusion of separation, is to take to task the idea that you are what? A separate body-mind capable of objectively observing life and deciding from there on what is necessary, needed. That's not going to play out for harmony or happiness. You may solve certain problems along the way in that particular thought system, but you will not find what the masters are speaking about, which is insight, intuition, that transcends the reasoning, ego-centered mind. And I suspect maybe guys like Tolle believe, as I kind of feel is true, that after our struggles and possibly a lot more suffering, the human race may actually evolve into a place of keen insight. I know some years ago there was a science fiction movie where they had these legal systems where they had psychics who sat in on jury cases, and they would immediately check any type of response from the people being questioned and say true or not true, because they would know from insight, they would know this person is not telling the truth or is telling the truth when he said this or she said that. So it may be we'll wind up in a place like that after who knows what we have to go through, because looking at the world from a certain perspective is to suppose that we may not really be evolving outwardly at all. But what we should know is this: the evolution being spoken about by the masters down through the ages is an inner evolution. It is for those who want to take to task their own awareness and transcend the thinking of the world that creates the conflict, the suffering, the war. And that is possible. That is entering the kingdom of heaven or God consciousness, because there is no heaven separate and apart from the life we are living. There's no separate place beyond the stars, perhaps, where a soul travels. Souls seem to continually return over and over again to this particular level and other levels, according to Edgar Cayce, that there are other levels beyond the third dimension or fourth dimension, fifth dimension, other levels of consciousness. But here we have the ability to reflect. In other words, we take on a body so that we can reflect upon our thinking, our beliefs, and our actions, and thereby alter our thinking, our beliefs, and our actions until we alter them to the place where, listen to it. If you don't take anything else away from this talk, you might want to take this. Where we alter that thinking, all those beliefs, to the place where we become in harmony with one with God consciousness, or the nature of God as we were meant to be, or fulfilling the will of our Creator. So we are at a disadvantage in our very opulent Western culture, and possibly almost in every culture, because the ego-centered idea of self that develops from our childhood on up is a natural state at first. It's required of us to go through that, but then find that there's more to life than that. But we are so long in that state and that definition of life as being strictly physical and personal, that it is really difficult to start to step away or out of it to practice a higher level of awareness. And that is the result of the ego, which in modern parlance is spoken about through A Course in Miracles and through most of the masters in modern day jargon. They speak of this ego. Let me give you an example of the power that the ego has over us in its subtle ways. You have to know that the Course in Miracles refers to the ego as being unreasonable. And the Bible refers to the ego as being the most devious, cunning character in all creation, which is symbolized by the serpent. But there's a story I think is going to bring home to you something about the subtle cunning of the ego. In 1953, a Catholic missionary serving in Bolivia, and I think the tribe or natives were the Surinomo tribe in Bolivia. Anyway, this Catholic missionary inadvertently offended one member of the tribe who shot an arrow at him. And the arrow pierced the missionary's temple on the left side and protruded down through and came out the right cheekbone, about an inch from his nose. And it was about close to a week before there was a doctor he could get to. And so when he got to this doctor who had a small clinic somewhere nearby, the doctor wanted to immediately remove this arrow. 10 inches of it was sticking out of his temple and 8 inches out of his cheekbone. And but the cleric, the missionary, had at that point wasn't discomforted enough by it anymore. And the doctor said there's no real injuries here that we have to be concerned about, and the bleeding has stopped. So he planned to operate on him the following day and remove the arrow. But the cleric requested that he leave it in for a few days. He wanted to the missionary wanted to go back to the tribe with the arrow still in his head and teach them the meaning of forgiveness as opposed to vengeance. And so he did. He went back for a few days, but then made some kind of contact with the doctor that he didn't want to have the arrow removed at all, ever. In the first place, he got used to people, passerbys, ordinary people who saw him and stared at him. He got used to it and didn't think anything of it. But he sort of appreciated his ability to carry a spiritual or Catholic message about redemption to everyone he spoke to after that. He didn't stay with that particular tribe only for a while, and then he went on to do other work. But he kept this arrow lodged in his head, 8 inches sticking out of his cheek, 10 inches out of his temple. He kept this arrow lodged in his skull for 11 years. And on his deathbed, while he was doing confession with some higher bishop or father of something or other, I guess he was doing his final confession, and through the dialogue with his higher priest, he came to light that the arrow may have become a symbol of pride that he had. And so at that point, he requested the medical people to remove the arrow before he died. He was on his deathbed. To remove the arrow before he died. He did not want to offend the Lord when he arrived in the kingdom of heaven. Okay. This is a true story. You'll remember this story more than you'll remember anything else that I say or the quotes that I share. But here's an example of the cunning and the subtlety of ego, which finally became a realization in the mind of this particular Catholic cleric. And of course, in Miracles speaks to this whole idea in this way. Can we have this next PowerPoint? You can read this in the Course in Miracles text, page 51, and in the new edition it's on page 57. I remind you that most of you have the new edition. Everyone makes an ego or a self for himself, which is subject to enormous variation because of its instability. He also makes an ego for everyone else he perceives, which is equally variable. Their interaction is a process that alters both, because they were not made by or with the unalterable. It is important to realize that this alteration is a process that alters both, because they were not made by or with the unalterable. It is important to realize that this alteration can and does occur as readily when the interaction takes place in the mind as when it involves physical interaction. There could be no better example that the ego is only an idea and not a fact. Can we have this back again, please? Everyone makes an ego or a self for himself. It's more understood that it develops. It's not something we make. We sit by and say, oh yeah, I'm going to develop. It's just something that happens in our passage in life. So everyone makes an ego for himself, which is subject to enormous variation among so many people because of its instability. He also makes an ego for everyone else he perceives, which is equally variable. Their interaction is a process that alters both, because they were not made by or with the unalterable. It is important to realize that this altercation is a process that alters both, because they were not made by or with the unalterable. It is important to realize that this alteration can and does occur as readily when the interaction takes place in the mind as when it involves physical interaction. There could be no better example that the ego is only an idea and not a fact. So, we are brought to a place in understanding that actually is stating to us the error in our mind, the errors in our mind. Do you see how variable it is, the way it's referring to this? How we assume when we say we know someone, in that unenlightened state of consciousness, we know this person or we know that person. We have a whole, set of ideas that go along with defining who that person is. And we are defining ourselves by everything we define as not being ourselves. And so there's a lot of alteration in there, and so it makes any kind of judgment at least precarious, maybe even impossible. And so the Course in Miracles will also say this. Can we have this next PowerPoint, please? You can read this in the text, page 50, the new edition, page 56. The ego is afraid of the Spirit's joy, because once you have experienced it, you will withdraw all protection from the ego and become totally without investment in fear. Your investment is great now because fear is a witness to the separation, and your ego rejoices when you witness to it. Leave it behind. Do not listen to it, and do not perceive it. Listen only to God, who is as incapable of deception as is the Spirit He created. Release yourself and release others. Do not present a false and unworthy picture of yourself to others, and do not accept such a picture of them yourself. Can we have this back, please? I suspect this is the high hurdle on the course of transformation into enlightened awareness, or living from an enlightened consciousness. This here about our limited conditioning from birth that brought us to a place where we have supposed we have the ability to judge. And then we wonder why we read in the Bible, the Master's teaching, judge not, that you be not judged. For the measure you give is the measure you're getting back. So the whole idea of judgment in the initial state of consciousness is erroneous. It's not so. And what happens is that we may make a judgment about a particular person or situation, which is incorrect because it's filtered through a limited definition of myself and the other person. But we will react to the judgment. We may carry on negative emotions and feelings for a long time without realizing that the judgment itself is erroneous and needed to be discarded on behalf of finding one's way into true life. So we do not react honestly, usually, to anyone or any set of situations. We react to our perception of it, which is more often than not skewed. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to catch ourselves when we are embracing negative emotions, embracing negative thoughts, taking a holy pause and say, no, I think I'd rather choose peace. And so in this situation, look at what you do. Instead of holding that grudge, that vengeance, you're not firing an arrow into somebody's head. You're simply pausing to know you choose to feel harmony and peace. And so you're so much more willing to forgive and be considerate and even helpful. That's all religion, folks. What I just said right there. That's all there is. Everything else is just a lot of pomp and circumstances, a lot of scripture, a lot of middlemen, people. If you want to come into the life that is advocated by Jesus Christ, then the way to do it is to take to task your ego-centered definition of life and the separation that holds you apart from true forgiveness, true consideration, true peace, and seeing everything that you look upon as sacred. So we're going to meditate together. That's one of the practices that helps us enter the higher state of a level of awareness. Let's take a couple of deep breaths. Give yourself permission to be okay. No matter what, there's no reason to have guilt. It's not your fault that you were born into a certain level of thinking. There's no guilt to be shared or to be had. There's no punishment. There is only understanding to be expanded. So breathe and rest in your okayness. We have been given permission to reflect on our thinking, our lives, our relationships, to reflect and alter as needed. So gently bring to mind this ideal truth. And don't be concerned about thoughts that may be coming in that interfere. Let them come, let them go. Return your thinking to this particular ideal. There is only one everything in you, in me, in everything we see. There is only one. Only one. Only God. There is only one everything. Only one. In you, in me, in everything we see. There is only one. Only one. Only God. There is only one everything. In you, in me, in everything we see. there is only one. Only one. Only one. Ethereal, knowing soul. as we go forth from this meditation to those places we occupy in time and space. Let us go forth with a greater dedication to practicing the presence of God. For this opportunity in every moment, we give thanks. And to this we say, Amen. We will take an offering for unity now. And as we're preparing to do that, I want to remind you that there's a promo code in the lobby that you can use if you want to tithe through PayPal or Venmo. And I think it's on the handout as well. Those of you that are watching this on our website, you can scroll up to the right-hand corner where there's a place you can tag, and it'll give you the different ways to donate to Unity of Boulder. And do take advantage of that. Improve your karma by donating. For this opportunity, then, let us bring into our hands that gift we'd like to make to Unity. Let's bless it with this offering statement. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive, because I give. And so it is.
The birth of Christ within brings peace to all, and love and light to all the earth. The birth of Christ within brings peace to all, and love and light to all the earth, to all the earth, to all the earth.
You can join me now, please. We dedicate this tithe to the will and the work of the Spirit of truth, the Spirit that joins all of us. We dedicate this tithe to the victory of the Spirit of truth. Amen. We will have our group meeting in Fellowship Hall today. So you can have some refreshments over there and be involved. If you want to stay and chat about today's talk or anything that has to do with unity, I'll be over there in 8 minutes and 26 seconds after the service. Oh, you might wonder what I do for 8 minutes and 26 seconds. I go back to my office and I feed my dog. All right. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Santisha will be officiating at the 11 o'clock service. You certainly want to hear this particular talk she's going to share this morning. I heard pieces of it as she was talking to a friend.
And we're doing the grounds cleanup right after the second
Oh, that's
service.
right. You didn't get out of the grounds cleanup by coming to the 9 a.m. service. You didn't get out of that. In fact, you're more into it than anybody. You should return. If you don't stay for the second service, return at 12 o'clock. We're only going to spend an hour. And if you don't have equipment, hedge cutting equipment, things like that, weed eaters and things like that, then we have equipment here. We're going to try to clean up the outer appearance of the church. So do give an hour to that. All right. To everyone, have an amazing day.